the appeal board said, without a specific contract between a scheme and the service provider, no debt owing by the scheme to the service provider is created merely by the provider rendering services or supplying goods to members of the scheme. The pharmacy argued that in terms of Section 59(2) of the Medical Schemes Act, it had a right to payment, and I need to read this as well. Section 59(2) says, a medical scheme shall, in the case where an account has been rendered, subject to the provisions of the Act and the rules of the scheme, pay to a member or supplier of service a benefit owing to the member or supplier of service within 30 days. Now, interestingly, what the appeal committee had said when looking at this provision of the Act was that surely once the service has been provided to the member, it can no longer be said that the benefit is owing to the member. At that point in time, the service provider is effectively out of pocket if they've operated on credit, and therefore the benefit owing must be a benefit owing to the supplier of the services. The appeal board said that's clearly wrong, because if one looks at whether the service has been provided or not in order to determine to whom the payment is due, then there would never be a circumstance where the medical scheme would be liable to its member, because the liability can only ever arise once the member has received the service. And therefore that was considered by the appeal board to be an incorrect reading of Section 59(2). The appeal board said that it still comes back to the central issue of the business of a medical scheme. If the medical scheme has made an undertaking to a member to defray expenditure, then the obligation between the medical scheme, from the medical scheme lies in favour of the member. If the member has contracted on credit with the supplier, then the member is still the debtor of the supplier and the supplier is still the creditor of the member. So if between the member and the medical scheme there's an arrangement that the medical scheme has choice as to whether to pay the supplier or the member, it is only ever the member who can go to the medical scheme and demand payment, not the supplier. The next point that the Medical Schemes Appeal Board raised is the question of if the service provider is content to provide services to members on credit and the scheme pays their member to assist in defraying the liability, then the member remains liable to the service provider. And there is no enrichment on the part of the member. It's simply up to the service provider to claim its money from the member, as would be the ordinary debtor and creditor relationship. The other finding that the appeal committee had made, which importantly the appeal board dealt with, was the finding that the scheme had not complied with Section 59 or with the regulations in terms of Section 59(2) of the Act. The Medical Schemes Board very importantly recognized that Section 59(2), which says that payment must be made within 30 days of receiving a claim, is obviously only triggered if a claim is received. And the question of what constitutes a claim is a matter that is determined with reference to the rules of the scheme. In this case, and it's an important lesson for schemes, the rules of the scheme defined what a claim entailed, and in industry terms, it entails paper claims. The fact that the scheme was prepared as a facilitating mechanism or a commercially sensible arrangement to acknowledge certain electronic submissions by service providers was effectively an indulgence that the scheme gave to its members in order to ensure that things operated smoothly. But as soon as the scheme became aware that there might be a problem with that commercial arrangement or that indulgence, the scheme had the right, in fact it had a duty in terms of its fiduciary duty to its members, to investigate and take steps necessary to protect its members. So because the pharmacy's submissions electronically on behalf of members didn't constitute claims as defined in the rules of the medical scheme, therefore